On February 8, 2015, Chief Justice of Alabama, Roy S. Moore, in a dramatic show of defiance towards the federal judiciary's decision, opposed Judge Callie Grande's federal Supreme Court decision that Alabama's anti-gay marriage ban was unconstitutional. Moore stated that, effective immediately, no probate judge of the state of Alabama, nor any agent or employee of any Alabama probate judge, shall issue or recognize a marriage license that is inconsistent with the Alabama Constitution.
I think it's pretty crazy that an Alabama judge is not doing what the Supreme Court ruled on. I think it's extreme. He's a bigot, and I think that he's allowing his personal stance to get in the way. His personal stance is getting in the way of him being a professional, essentially.
What is your stance on Roy S. Moore's decision?
I believe Roy S. Moore is legally and morally wrong. Because, well, first of all, on legal terms, he violated a federal rule, which is illegal and unconstitutional. I mean, you can have your own views, but if you violate federal stance on something, that's not allowed.
Though Moore cites states' rights as the main reason for this refusal to comply, we can see that he and Alabama have had a long history of redefining marriage as a moral issue.
Moore reframes marriage as a religious institution rather than an economic one. Therefore, he states that marriage must adhere to the biblical definition of one man and one woman. This directly reflects the way slavery, an economic institution that pervaded all manner of Southern life, was also justified as biblical and therefore ethical. Though we now commonly associate Christianity with political conservatism, this wasn't always the case. Religion and conservatism became equivalent only leading up, during, and following the Civil War. Southern politicians throughout the 1800s used the Bible and religion to justify slavery, stating that God had created and therefore approved of the institution. Therefore, this marked the beginning of the tradition of wielding fundamentalist Christianity as a tool to resist social change, because they claimed that God approved of slavery. It was traditional and should therefore be preserved.
As a result, religious fundamentalism became synonymous with conservatism. Similarly, Lost Cause mythology allowed the South to avoid radical Reconstruction. It framed the South as the godly nation, more moral than the rest of the country. Therefore, religion, the tool and justification of conservatism, became entwined. Similarly, states' rights and conservatism have become synonymous as well. Moore did not defy the Supreme Court because he disagrees with the idea of big centralized government. Hypocritically, his Foundation of Moral Law, an organization he formed in 2002, have countered California state laws over 5 times since 2009. Therefore, it's not so much federal government that he's attacking, but liberal federal government. Especially under the Obama administration, LGBT rights have become deeply ingrained in the liberal platform, while opposing those rights have become a touchstone of the conservative parties. Therefore, the real sin is not big power, but liberal power. Moore does not want to be influenced by what he perceives as liberal legislation, whether that comes from California, a state, or from the federal government. Therefore, the real sin is not big power, but liberal power. Moore does not want to be influenced by what he perceives as liberal legislation, whether that comes from California, a state, or from the federal government.
According to Joseph Smith, a judicial politics expert, Moore's goal is resisting liberal movements and policy, and he appeals to the South's fundamentalism for popular appeal, and as justification for his reactionary conservatism. When he demanded that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg be impeached for supporting gay marriage, though his motivations are religious, he once again cites the biblical definition of marriage. He is actually recalling a long history of partisanship, and of Republican states feeling threatened by a Democratic administration. When Roy Moore talks about the legacy of states' rights, he is recalling the legacy of the Bible Belt resisting social change. When schools were desegregated, Alabama Governor George Wallace in 1963 stood at the entrance of University of Alabama's Foster Auditorium, blocking the doorway from 2 black students, Vivian Maloney and James Hood, because he thought desegregation was immoral.
And when interracial marriage was finally legalized in Alabama in 2000, behind all other states, 41% of the state were still opposed to it, citing moral and religious reasons. And in 2012, a survey by Gallup Incorporated revealed that the majority of people opposing gay marriage cited God or the Bible as their reason. As you can see, very little has changed. With every social and political movement, Christianity has become the cornerstone of political conservatism, and these moral objections then justify states' rights. Therefore, More's failure of secularism reveals an entire history of using religion to justify slavery, racism, homophobia, and to ignore necessary social reforms.
Following the radical 1960s, reactionary New Conservatism was founded on the idea that liberalism would cause chaos. Similarly, when More was trying to impeach Ginsburg, he said that same-sex marriage would result in chaos. More, who considers same-sex marriage as the epitome of liberalism, recycles the same appeals that were used in the 1980s. Therefore, More's decision, stemming from his desire to preserve traditional and biblical law, reveals just how closely conservatism and religion have become entwined in Alabama, a result of the Confederacy using religion to reject radicalism and justify racism. Furthermore, his framing of the conflict as one between state and federal government is hypocritical, because he only ever rejects federal law if it is liberal, and he consistently attacks state laws that are. His resistance against the threat of a national liberal tide becomes more desperate as same-sex marriage approval only rises. His threat of God's wrath and of chaos is an attempt to preserve conservative power in the face of a changing society.